Contact! Hey, welcome back everyone. You're watching Centerline Designs. My name's Cole if you're new to the channel, and this is our Snowcat build. This is a one-of-a-kind rig, and boy do we have a major milestone in store for you today. It's one of the most anticipated parts of the project, getting the engine started. Yep, I think we're just about ready to fire this thing up. We got to splash some fuel in. Cooling system's not done yet, and there's various other things to tidy up, but I think we're ready to do a test fire. I'm pretty confident we're there. So yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. So today we're gonna go ahead, start getting the back of the cab on. I'm pretty sure that I don't need it off anymore. We've gotten everything finished. If you watched the last video, we got the roof all welded on. So that's good. We don't have to put any more heat in on up there. We got the cowling all wrapped up. So we're gonna open up a can of polyurethane adhesive sealant and put some on the cab, get that panel on, go ahead and do the same thing to the firewall, and then we're ready to put the bell housing on the engine, drop that in. Yeah, we got a lot of things that we can do. I don't know how far we're gonna get in this video, but we're gonna try and get some stuff done because we're getting close. Alrighty, well, I'm gonna get all that set up, and then hopefully I don't wind up with all of that polyurethane on myself, because I always tend to, but see how it goes. All right, let's get to it. Got tons of these Torx stainless screws. It won't be easy to see, but they have a built-in washer underneath. They work really good. All right, we'll get a couple clamps on up here just to suck that in until we can get the roof extension on. First body panel done. I think we're there. Let's put the bell housing on the motor and drop this thing in for the last time. If you're curious about how any of this stuff was made, there's a whole playlist of videos you can go check out. I think we're up to nearly 30 something now, so I videoed all aspects of this build. I'm putting this pump assembly on, but it's not going on for the last time. It's gonna be coming off to get the coupler in place still. But let's get it on here and see what it looks like. Here, I'll give you a view here. So the pump plate has slots vertical and the bell housing has slots horizontal, so that the pump can be located to the center of the crankshaft. So you can see right here, it's obviously not lined up, but we're gonna have all the play we need to line these two shafts up. Yeah, there's a ton of play in this, and then we have jack bolts on the side to really dial it in, align those shafts perfectly, and then we're not gonna have any issue blowing out bearings or throwing pump seals or anything like that. I think it's gonna work out really well. I'm just setting it in an arbitrary position. There we go. That should be the last time. I'm curious, who thinks that it'll actually be the last time that this goes in here? Okay, so this engine really hasn't been run in a year and a bit since they took it out of the car, and I haven't had any oil in it because I've been moving it around. So I want to go ahead, I'm just going to pull the glow plugs and put a little bit of engine oil in down in the cylinders just to ensure that the cylinders have some lubrication in them. And I think we could go ahead, jump the starter, we'll see it turn over a little bit, and then let's keep going, putting everything together. There's a glow plug. Use my handy oil can. There. Get a few squirts in there. So if you haven't been following this build, this is a 1.9 liter Volkswagen turbo diesel. It's out of the early 2000s Jetta Beetle. The engine code is an ALH, and it's one of the most sought after little diesels. They're highly, highly reliable, and there was a ton of them out there. And the cars usually rotted away before the engine went bad, so they're not too hard to get your hands on. Back at it here on another day, and I went ahead, whipped this up. It's gonna hold all the wiring that has to come connect in here and then come up into the cowling. And now I'm gonna start running some of this wiring point to point on the engine. The harness is a little extra long, so I think I am gonna take the time to shorten it up and make it real nice and neat. So yeah, wiring time. Well, videoing some of this wiring is not the most easiest thing in the world to do, but we're getting it done. Okay, well, it's not completed by any means. A lot of the things like the rad fan, the temp sensor, the fuel gauge, that stuff's not run yet because the cowling's not in. I have most of the engine stuff together, and I was looking at it. If we go ahead and put fuses in to start livening things up, I can check things one at a time. Make sure, you know, computer turns on, doesn't smoke out. We can liven up to the ignition. We can liven up to the ignition switch and check that the switched fuse block works, and maybe even check crank. It's not gonna run, I don't have that set up, but we could maybe check crank, so I don't know, let's do the smoke test. I'm gonna go back the mini truck in and run some jumper cables to it. All right, well, kind of moment of truth here. Let's see what happens. Well, that shouldn't have happened. All right, well, I'm not really sure what happened there. I'm guessing I got something mixed up in the wiring to the ignition switch, because as soon as I threw in a fuse for the start solenoid, the start relay, it just cranked there real quick for a second. So I disconnected the battery here. I need to just look through the wiring, run it all out. It's been a while since I wired this now, and I bet you I just flip-flopped something. So I got the dash down. Troubleshooting isn't really going to make for interesting videoing, because I don't know, I got to look at it and pull the meter out and do some checking. So once I get it figured out, I'll bring it back in, all right? Okay, well, I'm not going to go too in depth into my drawings because it really only needs to make sense to me. But ultimately, what I did is I checked out the ignition on and start of the key switch, and it was okay, but what I did is when I soldered the wires to the relays, I flip-flopped them. So rather than try and deal with any of that, it was easier just to flip the two wires on the ignition switch. And yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you're starting something up for the first time, commissioning. There's always little weird things like that. Who knows what I was thinking? I saw the wrong number and soldered the wrong wires, but just flip them, boom, mark up my drawing. It's done. The number that the wire was doesn't really matter. Yeah, let's power this up and see if we smoke anything. Oh, well, that's good. So these lights were messing me up a little bit. I was confused why some are on and some aren't, even though all the fuses are missing. But the way it works is by having a small circuit between, I guess, what would it be? Your load side needs to have a load on it. It needs that ground reference to turn the light on. So the circuits that don't have a fuse and the light isn't on, it's strictly because that probably has some sort of switch in the circuit. So this wire ultimately is floating. It doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't connect to ground. Whereas the circuits that have a load connected, like a light on or the computer or something like that, with no fuse in, it shows this little light. So it's a little deceiving, but yeah. Okay, so ignition's on, and perfect. I hit start or crank, and you can hear my start relay opening and shutting. So that's good. I have the starter solenoid unplugged at the moment, but I may go ahead and plug that in and let's give this engine a little crank over. All right, well, over here, let's check out gauge lights. Woohoo! We got gauge lights. Gauge lights on, and they turn off with the key. Perfect. Let's check crank. Hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Alrighty, well, we have ignition power and crank works. Yeah. All right, so we're back at it on another day. I don't even recall where I left off in this video. The camera died and I plugged away getting some extra little things done off camera. But I've made a bit of a list of things that I kind of need to address. I do know that we previously sorted out a couple little wiring mistakes I made. So now the ignition turns on, picks up the switched fuse block, and we can crank the engine. The list of things to do here. Wiring, we gotta wire the temperature sensor, we gotta wire up the fan switch, we gotta wire up the fuel gauge, the MAF sensor, and the rad fan still. That's all pretty easy. The wires are basically there. We just gotta connect everything up. We gotta finish up the cooling system. I have some flexible rad hoses that I hope work. I'm a little skeptical on how well they'll seal, but we'll test it out. I'm not necessarily concerned about finishing that before we fire the engine. We could fire it up for a few seconds and then I can, finish up the cooling system after. So complete the exhaust, which is cutting down the stack and getting the stack hood mounted to the roof extension. So that's definitely wants to happen. We gotta actually mount the cowling. I put in the screws into the back panel there just to help the urethane set. So I'm gonna pull those out. We'll actually get the cowling mounted. We need to finish the vacuum system. So the only thing that requires vacuum on this is the wastegate for the turbo. So there's a N75 solenoid that throttles the wastegate. So we'll finish that up, not hard. And then I need to go ahead and I want to test the gauges. So we'll put the fuses in the fuse blocks there and just, you know, check the gauges. Before I put coolant in the system, I want to take a heat gun to the temperature sensor and make sure that it responds. Same with the rad switch. We'll heat it up, make sure the rad kicks on. And yeah, that's pretty well there. We can fire it up. So I don't know if we'll get that done in this video, but it'd be pretty cool if we can. So I don't even know where to start. We'll just start on something. I think I've decided the first thing I'm gonna do here is get this exhaust stack marked. We'll cut that down. We'll work on getting this hood mounted to the roof extension. A little bit of fabrication would be a good thing to start off the day. Perfect. I'm really excited with how that looks. Okay, well, let's get some of these other items taken care of. And then we're one step closer. Okay, well, if you're not familiar with engines at all, they have a vacuum system. And like most commonly in your cars, your brakes are a vacuum assist. So the vacuum that the engine creates helps to assist your braking. In this scenario, we only have one thing in our vacuum circuit, and it's this solenoid for the wastegate on the turbo. And what the wastegate does is help control the boost and when boost is applied to the engine. So we just have to mount this solenoid, run some silicone vacuum lines down to the turbo, and then go ahead and plug this in, and then close off all of the vacuum ports we're not using. And that will be that taken care of. And then we'll finish up some of this wiring. We need to add some oil to the turbo, charge it up with oil, some nice break-in oil. I think we go ahead, try and crank, and maybe even start this, so. Alrighty, let's get this marked. I'm thinking it can go right here. Wiring can just come up, and vacuum lines can snake down with everything else. Okay, we just gotta do a little soldering here. Plug in the solenoid. Help if I'm not so shaky. Go. That clips in there. This isn't exactly the right size vacuum line. No side cutters. Oh, there we go. But it'll work for now. I might have to get some larger stuff, but it'll work enough to test. Oh, having this lathe is so helpful just to whip up little parts like this. All right, plug is whipped up. There we go. There we go. Boom, plugged off. All right, well, I'm just working on getting all these things wired up, the rad fan switch, the coolant temp sensor, and then I'm gonna pull them out and put the heat gun to them, and we can watch the gauges, make sure the gauges change, make sure the fan cycles, and then we'll do the same to the fuel level. We'll pull the sensor out of the tank and we'll lift the sending unit up and down, and you can watch the gauges for me. So we just gotta get these, finish terminating these wires, and oh boy, we're getting close. I'm probably missing something, but I'll find that out down the road. Tie wrap that on there. Something like that. Actually, I'm not going to tie wrap that right now because we do have to take it apart one more time. But I think we can go ahead and test some systems here. All right, I know there's a little bit of glare there, but you should be able to see that. I'm going to move the sending unit and keep an eye on that for me. Let's see what happens. I'll move it to about half-ish, full. Empty. We have a fuel gauge. It works. I was just moving the sending unit here. I don't know if you've seen one of these before, but this is just the pickup, and as I move it to various points, it adjusts the gauge. So we got it, you know, set to about half, and we're at about half. Fuel gauge, check. All right, so we got about 14 volts, which, because I have a charger on this right now, that's really good. Well, it's not 250 degrees. Maybe I have that hooked up backwards. Okay, well, I gotta look into the temp here, because that'll be the next thing we check. We can heat it up with the heat gun, but it might just not have a good connection. I'll look into that. Learned that you can adjust the color of the backlight on the fuel, so that's nice. The issue I'm finding with this is the sensor has full continuity, 0 ohms resistance. So that pegs the meter. The sensor's apparently shorted out. It should be reading a resistance, and then as it heats up, the resistance goes down and the gauge registers a higher temperature. But I think the sensor's no good. I mean, I guess that's what I get for buying cheap gauges. Yeah, if you put a meter across this sensor, you have continuity, 0 ohms, like perfect continuity. But it should be reading a resistance at any given temperature, and as that resistance goes down, the gauge reads a higher temperature. But it's not for some reason. I didn't spend a lot of money on these gauges. They're kind of an Amazon special, so that's likely my problem. I'm gonna have to look into getting a better sensor, I guess. All right, well, let's check the rad fan. This looks very similar to the other one, but this is a open closed contact, not a thermal resistive device. So where does that put us? 12 volts still. Ah, yes. And it's going the right way! Just takes a second for the heat get into the sensor, or into the contact. Oh yeah. Come on. Top. Yeah, read the directions. Alright, went and bought a nice big new funnel just for this. Using some 540 Rotella T. All right, that looks good. All right, well, back at it another day. I gave up because the crappy battery I had just had no amps to crank this thing over at any speed. So I went ahead, bit the bullet, picked up a nice cold weather winter battery for this thing. Lots of cold cranking amps. And I really just want to check to make sure we build oil pressure. And then we can continue with some of the little details that we need to get done to actually fire this thing up. Still haven't proven any of the computer wiring, but we'll figure that out once we add some fuel to her. So let's go crank it up. All right, we got oil pressure right here. Turn the ignition on. It's funny, the fuel gauge has to cycle through all of its colors to get to the selected one. That's kind of funny. About 13 volts, it's good. All right, let's crank. We got up to about 20 pounds on the oil, just under cranking, so that's good. Pretty happy with that. Hey, buddy. Hey, Taco Man. Hey, goofball. Goofball. Okay, well, I've puttered with a few things off camera just to make the process go a little faster here. I have the roof extension fully urethaned and bolted down, so that's on for the last time. Let's go ahead, get some urethane on the back of this cowling, and let's get it all bolted up. And then we can put the fuel tank on, put a splash of fuel in her, and I think we're ready to start testing start. So see if we can get it running. Yeah, it's super exciting. I didn't really expect this in this video, but I think we're gonna make it a long one and get a ton of milestones in this. So that's really exciting. Alrighty, since I have a tube of urethane open up, let's make a mess. Oopsie, a little bit of a mess. We can clean it up. All this little extra just wipes up with acetone. Well, this was exactly the thing I was trying to avoid. I slept on this a couple of nights, made sure I'm ready to glue that in, thought I was ready. This isn't in place. This needed to go in first. Jeez. Okay, I have one idea. This plate can come off, so I may be able to fish this up through the bottom. I'm gonna try that before I take this apart. Look at this. Yes. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. I did not want to take that back off, because you think I made a mess to start. Ooh, I would have made a big one if I pulled that apart. All right, here we are, folks. Got her all rolled out. I have been doing some work to get everything finished up so that we can splash some fuel in this tank and hear this thing start up. Not completely done. There's some other things that need to be addressed, but I have it rigged up enough to get it running. So let's get some fuel in and see how this thing sounds. I think this is a little bleeder here. Well, bled out the fuel system there. It was pretty easy. Let's see if she'll start. Oh, this has been so long in the making. I just can't wait. I know this engine sounds really good, so let's see what it'll do. Contact. think it's still just working all the air out of the system. I might crack an injector here. Let's see if it's spitting any fuel. Yeah, oh yeah, we got fuel at an injector. It's there already. Well, it would probably help if you put all the fuses in. So I was missing one on the fuel pump. So put that in. Let's see if it'll go. Contact. Woohoo! That is a surreal feeling. I had wrenches that were rattling out. I had wrenches that were rattling around on there, but also the body panels on the cab are just held on loosely by a couple of screws. So everything's kind of rattly right now. That won't be the case when it's all said and done. But wow, that didn't even have that many problems. I mean, one fuse missing. Bleed the fuel system, boom, fired right up. Oh, that felt so good. Oh, I guess I need to get that cooling system together and actually let it run for a little while. Nice. Oh, wow, that is surreal. That really fired up without much problem. I mean, I can't ask for better than that. Runs pretty good, smokes a little bit. It is a fairly used motor, so that's okay. We can freshen it up down the road if we need to, but sounds really good. I know the rig itself is really rattly right now. Nothing's all that tight. We'll address that in future videos, but it worked. It started, it ran. I could rev it up a little. Oh, so happy. So thanks for being here for this major milestone with me. I really do appreciate it. Give me a big thumbs up. Let me know how you thought this thing sounded. Should we do one more start? Yeah, let's do it. Let's start her up one more time. Contact. Yes. Alrighty. Thank you everyone so much. Drop me a comment, hit that like, tell me how you thought it sounded. I really do appreciate it. We have so many more cool things to come. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.